Dhimant. He's joining us as our opening speaker today. And just a little bit about him before he starts. So, when I asked him, could you share something about yourself and what is it that you would like our team, our managers, our audience to know? He gave a beautiful write-up. And before I go on with the whole career aspect of him, I would like to start off with his personal introduction, because that's really sweet. He is someone who lives in Bangalore with his wife and an 8-year-old daughter named Kiara. And he's really passionate about music. He says that he still plays the traditional way with amplifier and speakers on. And jazz and rock are his favorite genres. So if we have a lot of jazz and rock fans here, you have someone to talk to other than work-related stuff. Awesome. So moving on to, professionally introducing him, he's someone who has got more than 15 years of experience. He's worked for companies like Dell, Hexaware Technologies, Sun Microsystems, Flipkart, and now he is in Swiggy. He's currently the VP for private brands at Swiggy, and very interesting role. I'm sure food is very close to our heart. Most of us love food, and he's taking care of a very interesting business in food in Swiggy. I'm sure he'll probably be able to talk a little bit more about what his vision is, and he's recently joined Swiggy. Before that, he was in Flipkart, and most of his years of experience he has been at Flipkart. He was someone who was very, he played a critical role in introducing e-commerce and, making sure that the TV category is really a huge category. And he's also worked on launching Flipkart Quick, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Dhimant?
That's right. Yeah.
Awesome. So he's someone who's also done a lot of these launches in his previous organization, so been there ever since.
What I've done is I've divided the session into 3 parts, looking at the fact that there are a lot of participants. Some of them may require to probably understand a little bit more about what Vuca really means, right? So I'm going to spend section 1 is more about decoding Vuca as what Vuca is. A lot of people also get confused between Vuca, right? I mean, what is uncertainty? Let's say, what is ambiguity? So I'm just going to spend some time there and give you relevant first world basic examples so that you can connect to it if you don't understand it, right? And it's perfectly okay to not understand it. After I joined Flipkart, it took me 1 year to understand uncertainty kya hota hai, ambiguity kya hota hai, right? And it was only by 2017 that I got introduced to something called Vuca as a framework. And post that, I've been kind of consciously making efforts to overcome that, right? So that's been my journey, and I've had the privilege of working with very, very established, structured companies. A company which literally is 0 from 1, which is Flipkart. I mean, I joined at a time when we weren't getting any funding in Flipkart, right? So it was a very tough time. I mean, probably there was a period of time where we didn't even get our salaries, right? So, but we were lucky enough to get paid in ESOPs at that point of time, right? So, which obviously makes a lot of sense at a later stage. And then probably work for Swiggy, which is again like an established startup now. So you can call it a startup by heart, but an established company by size, right? So that's where I am right now. The section 2 is largely be going to talk about some of my experience and connecting it to Vuca, right? And section 3 is going to be largely about giving you 1 or 2 tips each on how I think you can do better to take away Vuca and overcome that, right? So how do you win in a Vuca scenario? Volatility is something which I like to kind of, the closest real world example I can think of is the stock markets, right? Think about beta in the stock markets, the volatility that is attached to you investing in a stock market. And that is the reason why, let's say, SIPs or let's say systematic investment is come out as a solution, is because there is a lot of volatility, right? So there are stocks with very high beta, there are stocks with very high volatility, and there are stocks like, let's say, Reliance, Larsen and Toubro, which are very low volatility, right? The returns also obviously are going to be slightly lower in a low volatility environment. But there is a win-win scenario, right? If you find the right mix of growth and volatility in stocks, you grow your portfolio at minimal risk and maximum return, right? So that's one example of volatility, which everybody would understand, right, at this stage. The second example is slightly more business oriented. Today, think about the supply chain disruption because of COVID, right? The Chinese supply chain, for example, right? You hear a lot about semiconductor shortfalls. A lot of this volatility has kind of derailed the entire supply chain for a lot of companies in India and worldwide, right? Uh, an example would be, because I was talking about audio, the audio equipment industry itself is going through a fundamental transformation, right? From a time when people were being forced to buy audio at discount because nobody wanted to buy them, to a stage where discounts have virtually gone away because there is a severe shortage of, let's say, semiconductors in the country, right? Similarly, the volatility with terms of aisa bhi nahi hai ki aaj if stuff is not there or stock is not going to come, tomorrow also it won't come. There is a large consignment coming tomorrow. After that, there is a 3 month, there is no consignment coming in, right? How do you strategize in such an environment? So another example of volatility is how, let's say, COVID has disrupted the supply chain. Until the time we are in COVID, or let's say we will stay in the pandemic, this is going to continue, right? So this is a second example for volatility. I hope you guys now kind of put your finger and say ki, हाँ, volatility क्या होता है, right? If I were to put it in an English three-worder, I would say change is rapid, right? That's what I put in my hand. Whenever change is very rapid, you tend to term that as volatility, right? Slow change is always easier to adapt. Fast change is very difficult to adapt. Not enough information to predict what will be the future is uncertainty, right? Think about two dots, right? Point A, point B, right? When I say volatility, the A to B would basically mean a sinusoidal curve, right? With the amplitude changing, right? Sometimes the change is this, sometimes the change is very low, sometimes the change is very high. That's your journey from A to B in volatility. In uncertainty, you can reach from point A to point B, and point A to point B1, and point A to point B3 by taking different paths, right? So every path that you take will take you to the, a different outcome. The problem is that you want to reach a particular point B, which you do not know where it is, right? So in very layman's language, this journey from A to B has various paths to take, and whichever path you take will essentially define where you will land up, right? That is where the difficulty in predicting which path to take, right? Imagine an entrepreneur and his journey towards, let's say, achieving something which is point B. There are 10 ways in which he can achieve B, right? That's the uncertainty, right? And again, an example, if I were to give you an example, it would be today, the government's taking decisions for locking down curfews based on COVID-19, right? There is not enough information available how the variant will spread, right? There are multiple possibilities. We could go the UK way, we could go the US way, we could go the South Africa way, right? And hence, the decision that you make is not 100% sure, right? And every decision will take you to a different point, right? A weekend curfew will get you somewhere, while a complete lockdown will get you somewhere, right? So that's a real life example again. The third point is complex, right? The complexity is nothing but overload of data and information. Now, we all will say working in startups, we make data-based decisions, right? Amazing. More the data, more the merrier. Let me give you a very simple example, which will make very easy for you to understand how bad complexity can be, right? Think about the famous thing that Henry Ford says, right? He says, I'll give you, you can have any color of the car as long as it is black, right? That was the world that we lived in. We had one car to choose from. Remember the 90s when you had a Maruti 800 to choose from? The only other competition to that was an Ambassador and a Fiat Padmini, right? You knew what was your budget. You knew what you wanted to achieve, the speed at which you wanted to travel, or what's the mileage you wanted, and you made a choice. Imagine today, you have 130 cars in the market, right? The probability of you making a mistake is more than ever, right? A lot of you would have chosen Hyundai and Maruti for the mileage and then realized how fragile those cars are, right? A lot of you would have made a choice of a car looking at how pretty it is and realized the mileage is really bad, right? It is happening because of overload of data and information, right? If I were to take it to the point A to point B analogy, imagine the point A to point B, there is no line in between. There are infinite amount of dots in between. right? And you can connect each dot to form a new path, right? You will never be able to make a human decision to let yourself know कि मुझे कौन सा path follow करना है, because there are infinite possibilities and complexities, right? The only way you can probably solve that problem would be to say कि I'll choose all the dots of one size and then I'll just join them together, is one way of doing it, right? And then there are multiple other ways of doing it. But I want you to guys to understand how complexity can be bad and how lot of data can also actually hamper your decision making, right? So this is something that a lot of people today struggle with. And I would say among the four VUCA, right, which is V, U, C, and A, C in my head is the most difficult to play out with, right? While we may all take it as an advantage, it is also more severely affecting today's decision-making ability. Okay. The last and the one which I actually love the most is ambiguity. The reason I like it the most is because there are a set of people who do really well in ambiguous scenarios, right? I happen to be one of them, and hence I love ambiguity, right? Uh, Ambiguity in my head is, if I were to take again the A to B analogy, right? They are not going in similar directions, right? It is any thing said or told will depend upon interpretation and ambiguity, right? If you interpret it in one way, you're going to go in one direction. If you interpret it in another way, you're going to go in the second direction, right? So the decision is more difficult to make because you will end up at a stage which will, now the journey from A to B will become much more difficult, right? So ambiguity is fuzziness, is open to interpretation. One person can read differently, second person can read differently, but there are ways to navigate each of these problems. One thing which comes out beautifully in favor of organizations where VUCA is prevalent, and which is almost all the organizations in Bangalore today, at least, right, is the ability to disrupt. Okay, every such opportunity or every such environment which is VUCA gives rise to a new winner, right? The question that an organization has to ask themselves: are they at a stage where they have to defend, or they have to gain market share, or they have to disrupt, right? I actually feel that most of the companies in Bangalore today, or let's say in India today, are at a stage, the young companies, where they're ready to disrupt, right? And every such opportunity, I still remember Sachin Bansal and me, right, talking in one of the discussions in 2015, where Amazon was going crazy on pricing, and we didn't know what to do, right? And then demonetization happened at some point of time later, and GST changes happened. And I remember every time such changes happened, we were so afraid, but every time we got market share because we were more agile, we were more ready for these VUCA environments, and the traditional industries weren't. They kept losing share, we kept gaining share, right? So although mentally all of these challenges are going to challenge each one of yours working style, there's an opportunity for the organization to disrupt. Okay, how good or bad am I at surviving in a VUCA environment or living in a VUCA environment? I'll tell you some of the symptoms, right, which I actually faced, and this is a real life example. So I've written it down. Give me the liberty to read them, right? Uh, are you often confused, right? Do you fear decision making sometimes, right? Do you feel sometime, let's say that there is a you know insecurity in yourself about making a decision, right? Are you not really secure about making decisions? These are some of the personal things that employees go through when they are thrown into a VUCA environment or they're living in a VUCA environment, right? Again, each of this handled well will help you win, disrupt. But these are the typical symptoms that you are in a VUCA environment, and you don't really need to check that. I'm pretty sure one of these you would have experienced if you have worked enough in such organizations, right? On the other side, how does it come out for organizations, right? An organization who doesn't do well in VUCA environment, right, they would typically there would be a paralysis in decision making. Okay, because I spoke about people, leaders or managers are afraid about making decisions, tough decisions, right? That will see. Imagine a meeting, right, where the data is so complex, there is so much of ambiguity, there is so much of volatility. Most of the time, people end up saying कि काम करते हैं, एक हफ्ते बाद फिर से मिलते हैं और फिर देखते हैं क्या करेंगे, right? A classic example of decision making paralysis, right? Second is short-term thinking over long-term thinking, right? Because you cannot see or predict the uncertainty for the future, or there's a lot of ambiguity. You tend to do what is right for today, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, right? And you tend to, because today, day after tomorrow, and day after tomorrow's day after tomorrow is more predictable in nature. You will tend to make decisions where you will succeed for the next 5 days, right? Uh, Being very blunt, I actually think that a lot of us are here at this stage hired because of the fact that we can look beyond that. And that's the expectation from most organizations which are in the VUCA phase, right? Uh, if I look at all these 5 traits that I spoke about that people inhibit and the traits that an organization inhibits, there is one thing that puts them all together, right? If you think like an owner, if you think like a business owner, right? If you think like, let's say, an entrepreneur, and if you think it is my own business, a lot of these come in together to form a synergy, right? You now are able to take decisions because you actually feel that I am the owner of this business, right? So what has worked for me, at least, or my organizations that I've worked for, is that when the true culture of people thinking entrepreneurial in nature or become ownership of their own areas, is when a lot of this automatically gets sorted for, right? And again, I'm not jumping to a solution. I'm just telling you top of mind something that has helped me, so that you can probably connect to a lot of this, right? Now, to summarize section 1, which we just spoke about, which is decoding VUCA, let me tell you, it is exactly opposite of stable and predictable. Okay? Anything that is not stable, anything that is not predictable, and that itself is what gives you the opportunity to disrupt. Okay? So I'm not really sure about what each one of you does, and probably we don't have the time to do introductions individually, but if I want you to take one thing away from, let's say, this section, it would be the ability to accept, acknowledge that VUCA is real. Uh, Ambiguity is going to exist. Volatility is going to exist for a period of time, for a large period of time. Uncertainty will plague the business that you're doing, because, like every other, emerging companies in the country, you are doing something revolutionary, right? And the more you think beyond the box, the more ideas you dabble with, VUCA is only going to show its ugly head again and again. Section 2 is more personal, very short, and I want to kind of take you through few examples that will help you decode if it's still not very clear, right? I'm going to talk about 2 examples. I'm going to talk about the TV industry at Flipkart, where I was part of the TV category, and very proudly, I would say, was able to start from a place where Sony would throw us out of their office saying कि यार online पे कोई TV नहीं खरीदेगा, right? To a stage where I remember my last meeting when Sony came back and said कि I hope the next category head is has that same vision that you have, Dhimant, right? And I've seen that journey, right? And that didn't happen because I was good, right? That happened because 1 out of 3 TVs sold in India today is sold online, right? I want to take one example of that. And the second example is how a traditional e-commerce company, which is either Flipkart Quick or let's say Swiggy, Instamart, which is now started selling grocery between 30 to 90 minutes, right? And I'll cover all the 4 points in these 2 examples, right? There was a time in the TV industry when Sony, Samsung, LG were the market leaders of this industry, right? If you look at 10 years back, I don't think your ambition to buy a TV went beyond Samsung, Sony, or LG, right? That's the most aspirational brand you wanted, right? Think about today. You are talking Xiaomi, you're talking Realme, you're talking a lot of these brands which have emerged as winners. But I remember the time when I was sitting in China in front of the global head of Xiaomi, and the question that was asked to us was, how many TVs should we send to India for lot 1, right? At that time, we were selling around 700 to 1,000 TVs a day on the platform, and a decision had to be made to understand how launching a TV, which would be half priced that of a Sony, Samsung with the same features or better, right, would result into in terms of demand projection, right? We had no clue. It was such an uncertain environment. If we went ahead and ordered 2 less TVs, we would have ended up in a scenario for the next 3 months. We wouldn't have any stocks in the country, right? Good problem to have, but business lost, right? And in these kind of companies, any opportunity to make business lost is not acceptable, right? So if I order too many TVs, there's a good chance that when the new model comes, almost 50% of the TVs would probably get wasted. and it was a huge loss to Flipkart. The entire money that would have made on each TV would have got wiped out just by the additional units that we ordered, right? How did we solve it? Probably charted out each of the possibility, right? So what we did is we made a data stream, A to B point. We said कि यार आज हम A पे खड़े हैं, हमको B पे जाना है. What can happen? One opportunity is that almost everybody who is buying today uh, will shift their TVs to, let's say, Xiaomi, right? A radical thought, but could be possible, right? Because people will stop buying a Sony TV, right? Uh, Second possibility, 50% of the people would probably stop buying and buy something else. But this never got us the answer, right? Because again, it's a very rudimentary way to solving things, right? We then had to go to the price point, the size of the TV, look at data and say कि यार मतलब कितने लोग हैं which have the probability to go to, let's say, and upgrade themselves to a bigger TV. We had to kind of do 10-15 possibilities, and I had to put my finger, right? Nobody else dared to do that. I had to put my finger on a line stream and say, okay, this is what we'll go by, right? This is the most probable, and we went with it, right? Did we succeed? Very hard to say. Success is very subjective. We did a pretty okay job, but that is not important. I just wanted to leave that example with you how uncertainty can. I mean, if I had not been in Flipkart for 3 years, I wouldn't have had the guts to make that decision honestly, and I would have probably gone to my head of electronics and told him, "Okay, boss, I cannot make this decision. This is above my pay grade, right?" But fortunately for companies like Flipkart, there is nothing called above your pay grade, right? You are the owner of that business. You are supposed to make that decision, and hence I give the example of taking ownership of your own set of businesses, right? Could I have gone wrong? Yes, I could have gone wrong, right? So that's one example. I wanted to talk about the complexity. I wanted you guys to imagine how the grocery business has worked over the years, right? Think about you going to your local sabji wala, right? उस local sabji wala को बिल्कुल ही पता है, he knows exactly कि मेरे पास किस type के people shopping करने आते हैं, right? He knows how many lemons to buy, right? कितनी आंटी आके मेरे से बड़े लेमन मांगती है, राइट? कितने आंटी आके मुझसे पक्के और राइप बनानास मांगती है, राइट? आई मीन, pardon, I'm just shifting to Hindi and English as I feel comfortable, but if you guys are uncomfortable, please do let me know. How many people will come and buy ripe bananas, right? How many want ready to eat apples, or let's say thoda sa baad ripe hone wala apples, right? All of this is how traditionally the grocery business has worked. Move to modern retail. Reliance came and said, I don't care what the local person wants. I will figure out an area. I will figure out an, let's say, a small catchment area. और उसके लिए मैं same decision लूंगा, right? A modern retail store will carry the same SKUs in one part of the city, or let's say even one city for some retailers, and will solve for that city, right? Then there are national players like, let's say, Big Basket or DMart, जहाँ पे DMart doesn't care about the local preferences, right? Largely, they would solve for the national buying, which means that you will get the best price on Surf Excel because they would buy Surf Excel for the entire country, right? And when you walk into the store, the price of Surf Excel is so good that you will leave your local brand to choose Surf Excel, right? That's been their strategy. When Swiggy, Flipkart, Amazon Fresh, all of these players came in, they adopted the model of dark stores, right? They said that we'll start stores right next to the consumer and will deliver in 15, 20, 30, 50, 60, 90 minutes, right? And now they picked up the worst of both worlds, right? They said that I don't have the data of the local preferences and I don't have the buying power, let's say, of the DMarts of the world, right? I still have to solve for the local preferences. मुझे कैसे demand forecasting करनी है, मुझे कौन से SKU उस catchment area के लिए खरीदना है. And it may sound that they have the data, but these companies don't have local preference data to that level, right? I mean, they don't have, right? Today, it's very hard to figure out कि मतलब Dhimant के घर पे कितने तरह के fruit बिकते हैं, right? Or what is the consumption pattern of Dhimant, right? This is one of the most complex model that of forecasting that has existed in the country today, right? And I have been part of that, and I can tell you with confidence, we had no clue how to solve this for at least 6 months. Okay, this is a real life example of see to another level, right? This is more complex than can ever get, right? Because the forecasting systems that we work on are so built for the nation, or let's say for a cluster, that you don't know how to handle a micro cluster, right? Uh, the third example I wanted to solve for was ambiguity, right? I remember somebody walking up to me and telling me solve for quick deliveries, right? Now think about quick deliveries, right? Quick deliveries बहुत तरह से हो सकता है. आप 15 मिनट को भी क्विक बोल सकते हो, 30 को भी क्विक बोल सकते हो, 90 को भी क्विक बोल सकते हो. That's one ambiguity. The second ambiguity is I can solve for speed by having many stores. I can solve by speed by having dedicated fleet sitting in the store. जैसी order आया वो भागा, right? There are multiple ways to solve it. Speed without knowing what your spend cost equation or what your consumer wants is going to be super ambiguous, right? This is one example of ambiguity that most of the times people make this mistake, right? The moment you get a brief on to solve something, you are on to the mark, right? Ambiguity है, लेकिन ambiguity हमने realize नहीं किया till the time we reach a certain point, right? That is one ambiguity. The second ambiguity is what product and tech people are facing in these organizations. Imagine working with the quick business team, which I handled, and being my engineering partner. It was a nightmare, right? The first 3 months, the only brief that was given to them is हमको fast delivery करनी है. उसके बाद हम घुसे, हमको realize हुआ कि okay, there are multiple other problems. Demand forecasting is a massive problem. We don't know what to buy, what to sell. Wastage was to the tune of 28%. 100 apples bought, 28 apples were being thrown away, right? 100 liters of milk bought, 28 liters of milk was being thrown away. If I buy 72 liters, next day 100 liters were being sold, right? And means I lost 22 liters of business, right? Then I went back to my engineering leader and said, here I need to solve the data pipeline and need to have a proper solve from with data science on forecasting models, right? He said, I am already in the course of solving for speed. अब मेरे को फिर से 6 महीना लगेगा, right? I don't have the ambiguity of charting out a long-term roadmap and getting reprioritized is very, very common, right? So if any of you guys are in that zone, right, where you feel that this is a unique problem, it is not. The only way to come out of this is to realize how to solve this, right? And like I said, there are no easy answers. I wanted to kind of leave you guys with the ambiguity example. And I think the last example that I had was volatility. I think volatility is something that, like I said, it's amplitude, right? Demand forecasting is again example, right? Ki matlab the amount of change that happens at a rapid pace. COVID-19, the day COVID-19 hit us, right? I'll give you an example. We had a on-ground fleet to deliver grocery of 15,000 orders per day. Okay. We had stocks worth 3 days, which means 45,000 orders the jitna mere paas stock tha. Okay. I got demand worth 45,000 on the first day of lockdown, right? Did I have the preparation of manpower? No, I did not. It took us 8 weeks to build the manpower to support 45,000 orders per day. 9th week, lockdown got over and the orders went down to 10,000 to 12,000 orders per day. People wanted to go back to the shops, right? And all of the build bandwidth completely we spent around 1 crore on manpower cost, which never got utilized. I think that was largely section 2 for me. I think if I want you guys to take something away from section 2, I want you guys to, after this session, right, take these examples, spend 5 minutes of your time thinking about your respective areas and put 1 or 2 examples where you faced each of these, right? And note it down. Just acknowledge it, right? Don't look for solutions, right? Solutions nahi milne wala itna aasani se. It's not going to be easy, right? But I can tell you for one sure aspect, right? कि अगर इसका कोई solution ढूंढ पाएगा, वो आप खुद ही ढूंढ पाओगे, right? It's you learn on your own, right? There isn't enough material available on the internet, on the platform, in books, in blogs, which can help you solve the Vuca problem, because each situation is so unique. I mean, who has, right? Nobody had. And the day we launched 90-minute delivery, 5 दिन बाद Swiggy ने 15-minute delivery launch कर दी, right? Our entire plan went for a toss, right? So acknowledge, write down those 3-4 items in your daily working routines where you feel you've experienced this, right? And then spend time thinking about how I can kind of overcome that, right? So that is what I would want you guys to take away from this section at least. I have 4 A's, right, that I have mapped against Vuca. And this is something I created in 2016-17 for myself. It has worked largely, but there are some modifications that I keep doing, right? So the first one is volatility, right? I think the most important thing is accept change, right? Volatility में मैंने देखा है, most of the times the mistake that we make is that we don't accept the rapid pace of change, right? We think that ये pace of change जो है वो खुद में खुद अपने आप को sort out कर लेगा, वो नहीं होता है. Identify in your environment the zones or the areas which are super volatile, right? Accept that change, because if you accept your change, then you can build for the future, right? जो डिमांड फोरकास्टिंग का मैंने जो एग्जांपल दिया, राइट, sometimes it's good not to react, right, in that situation. Accept the change and start building for the future. आज वो सॉल्व नहीं हो पाएगा, लेकिन शॉर्ट टर्म प्रॉब्लम सॉल्यूशन इज नॉट गोइंग टू हेल्प यू, राइट? सो एक्सेप्ट दैट चेंज इज व्हाट माय टिप वुड बी, एंड देन सॉल्व फॉर द build for the future, right? Building for the future could be creating a data science model for forecasting. It could be in the stock example that I gave you, right? It could be stop investing in, let's say, direct stocks which are very risky, very high beta, and start building a strategy for yourself which is more systematic investment based, right? But until the time you accept the fact that there are stocks which are going to be high beta, you will lose money, right? So that is my tip on at least volatility. उसमें ना एक और syndrome भी आ जाता है, doing something syndrome कहते हैं उसको, right? When volatility things are happening, right, things are moving fast, you tend to react, right? And if you react to volatility, you will only be dancing, right? You don't need to dance on that tunes of the sinusoidal curve, right? Spend some time acknowledging that change, don't react, and then build for the future. That's my tip, at least on volatility. Second is on uncertainty. मैंने आपको जो example दिया, right, A से B, there are multiple paths to reach from A to B, right? The only thing you can do is anticipate, right? And hence I said the second A is anticipate, right? In unknown situations or uncertain situations, I would request you to be creative and chart out every possible path from A to B as much as you can creatively think of, and put it across, right? At least when that uncertainty hits you, you know that, okay, this is one of the paths I had thought about, and hence I know at least where to start my solution on, right? अगर मुझे पता है सब possibilities, you can say कि यार there could be situations where there are infinite possibilities. I cannot charge infinite possibilities, right? But I think we are all smart enough to say कि अगर मैंने 100 possibility बनाया, इतना हम लोग आज स्टेज पे है कि हम लोग उसमें से most 10 probable situations को predict कर पाएंगे, right? And once you are able to shortlist those 10, anticipate those 10 paths, you will be able to at least mentally have a plan for each one of them, right? So that's how I would say would be my tip for at least handling uncertain situations. Uncertain situation का मतलब ये होता है कि the example that I give you about uncertainty, right, from charting from point A to point B, let's say there are 4 paths, A1, A2, A3, A4. मैंने चारों पाथ फाइंड कर लिया. मैंने A1 में मुझे क्या करना पड़ेगा, A2 में मुझे क्या करना पड़ेगा, A3 में मुझे क्या करना पड़ेगा, और A4 में मुझे क्या करना पड़ेगा, उसका मेंटल नोट बना लिया है. When shit hits the roof, at least know where to start, right? That's how I would play with it. इसमें one of the things that will help you is creativity, right? Be creative. People who are typically more left-brained, they struggle here because they don't go beyond the possibilities that they think are logical, and hence right-brained people have a little more advantage. Push yourself to be a little more right-brained in these scenarios. Okay. The third is complexity. Complexity, like I said, right, complexity is very, very tough, right? For me, complexity is very tough. What I do is find an anchor, right? For me, the A that I speak about is anchor. In complex situation, a lot of moving points are there, a lot of variables are there, right? Identify the variable. Invariably, in a B2C company, right, the variable is always consumer. Is always consumer, right? So I have made a mental note in my companies that I work for, right? As long as I'm doing right for the consumer, right, I can reduce the complexity, right? If I have to take a decision based on 3-4 variables, I'll choose P0 variable to be consumer, and then उसके बाद बाकी चीजें solve करूंगा. What if there are 2 consumer variables, right? Speed है, taste है. Let's say food, right? I'm giving an example. Should I solve for speed? Should I solve for taste? Right? Tough question. But still, while taking that answer, I will still say find my anchor. I actually feel that आप कितना ही fast deliver कर दो food, if the food is not good or the taste is not good, people will not come again, right? With speed, you can solve one-time sale. With taste and speed later, you can solve for multiple repeats, right? Hence, I would take a decision in favor of, let's say, taste, right? So identify the anchor. थोड़ा बहुत sacrifice अगर बाकी elements में करना पड़ा तो it's still fine. Hence, I would say complexity में the key is anchor. Find your anchor. Okay. And I think इसमें one of the things that I actually feel is a lot of short-term thinking actually inhibits you thinking and solving for complexity. So if you have a habit of, let's say, doing a lot of short-term thinking, right, try to keep that away, right? So that's one of the things that has inhibited me from taking the right decision in complex situations, right? Last is ambiguity. Ambiguity, I think my A is ask. Till the time I'm absolutely sure about what I'm trying to achieve, I ask, right? There is a fear in everybody, right? In such environments, if I ask too much, I sound stupid, right? I'm judged, right? But there are ambiguous scenarios in which asking is the right thing to do, because if you reach a stage where you don't ask, you don't clarify, you will reach a point where coming back from that point is going to be really, really difficult, right? Rather than fearing at that moment, or taking a call at that moment, is always good to clarify. I have been at a scenario where I have to go and ask very basic stupid questions to my CEOs, right? I mean, मैंने कल्याण को पूछा है कि when you say Flipkart quick, the name is quick, but I'm solving for only 90 minutes. 90 minutes is not quick in my zone, right? It's 30 minutes is quick in my zone, right? And the answer that I got from him was कि in my head, for Flipkart, relatively 90 minutes is quick, and hence we will solve for 90 minutes, right? But it turned out to be a wrong decision. But at least me, my CEO, and my engineering team, we all were clear that we are solving for 90 minutes, right? Had I taken that brief as quick and solved for 30 minutes, we would not have got anywhere as a team, right? We failed together as a team at least, right? So that's my 4As, guys. And I think one common theme, which I actually feel in a Vuca environment works brilliantly well, is be ready to fail fast, right? If you are not ready to fail fast, you will seek perfection, and in a Vuca world, perfection can be deadly, right? But when you fail fast, it's to enable quick feedback loops. It is not to fail gloriously, right? If you fail and if you don't get your feedback quickly that I failed, you're essentially going to take 6 months or 1 year to learn that you failed. The reason of failing fast is be able to recover from that failure and try again, right? Instead of trying once, I can try thrice if I have the ability to fail fast and learn from it, right? So this is largely how I would say ki understanding Vuca, deep diving into it, and finding at least one tip to handle Vuca and surviving in a Vuca environment and doing good for your company is what my pitch to you guys would be with this session.
So when you face with a very high pressure situation, I'm sure the team also is under a lot of pressure, and there will be days of long long working hours, no weekends, and there comes a point where employees will be like, enough, like this is never going to stop. So yes, how have you handled a situation of that sort in your team, where they've come and said, if you don't make this okay for us, we are quitting?
I think there are 3 ways of doing it. It's one is the most proactive way of doing it is don't take people to the moon without letting them know that they are the first people on the moon, right? That's the example that I give you, right? If you tell people that what you're trying to achieve by doing this, the end or the end point is going to be a high that they've never achieved in their life, right? I mean, imagine taking people and making them make a rocket when they know कि हम rocket में बैठने वाले हैं और moon पहुंचने वाले हैं. What they need to know is that they will be remembered as the first person to reach the moon, right? And again, it's not always as glorious as reaching the moon, right? It's upon the leader to do that storytelling with his team or her team, right? Make the team believe in your purpose, your cause. And if you do not yourself believe in your cause and your purpose, then whatever said, done, it is not going to work, right? And hence, I would encourage leaders to kind of go back to that. See, communication is not always one-sided, right? It is not always top-down. It's also bottoms-up, right? I mean, if you really don't believe in your cause, go to your teams and CEOs and VPs of the world and go and tell them that I don't believe in this cause. That's the last you want to do. If you are not convinced yourself, you cannot convince your team, right? So that's the proactive way of doing it, Saranya. I mean, show them that they are going to reach the moon, right? I mean, in a very nice, subtle way, explain to them what they are trying to achieve. And I'm assuming there will be mundane tasks as well. But again, if it's a mundane task, don't look at the task, right? Look at that task as one of the stepping stones of eventually reaching where you are, right? Uh, I mean, look at Zerodha, right? I mean, I'm sure number of people who have worked in Zerodha over a period of 3 years would not have known what they're going to stand at today, right? But today they are the number one market share player in the equity industry, right? And it's happened because the founder was able to show to their team what they're going to achieve, right? It's a very normal example. I could give examples of Teslas of the world, but I don't know enough. And I have some good friends at Zerodha, so I give you an example of Zerodha. But yeah, I mean, you need to do that storytelling with your team, right? The reactive way of doing it is being empathetic, being very, very empathetic, right? Uh, Acknowledging that your team is going through a tough phase. A lot of leaders don't even acknowledge it. Trust me, I've been there, I've done that both sides. I've been the person who has not acknowledged it, and I've been the person who has not been acknowledged, right? The last I expect my leader is to come back and say, "Acha, tu itna kaam kar raha hai?" That's not the way you acknowledge it, right? Being proactive about saying, I know what you're going through, right? I can connect with you, and we'll need you to continue for at least 2 more weeks to do this, because we are at a stage where it happened in COVID, right? I mean, in COVID, almost 50% of the bandwidth had died down, and almost the people who are not sick were mentally getting stressed because they had to do the work of two people, right? At that time, if you go and tell a person that you have fallen short, the right way to acknowledge that problem is the right communication, right? I know that you're doing the job of two people, right? These simple things go a long way in acknowledging, right? So that's how I follow. I mean, that's the rule that I follow. The third is obviously the most easiest one is throw money at your team, right? In terms of making sure that you set together as a group, meet, let's say send them gifts, etc. But that's, I would say, the easiest part of it, right? The first two ones are the ones which a good leader will kind of excel.
How to navigate situations which are clearly out of your control. Example, business pivots, premature closures, leadership changes, etc.
Yeah. I actually want to take that question. I think it's a very interesting question. Uh, uh, Leadership changes, I can take an example. Premature closures also I can take as an examples. But shifting of deadlines, sudden shifting of deadlines, right? Business pivots is also very critical, right? Suddenly तुम consumer के लिए solve कर रहे थे, suddenly तुमको किसी ने आके बोल दिया कि अब unit economics solve करना है, profitability solve करना है, right? And everything goes for a toss. I would say uh, it's not easy to navigate. I'm first acknowledging the problem that it's not easy to navigate in these situations which are out of your control. Uh, I think the answer lies in the question yourself, right? Try to bring the situation first in your control, right? Don't beat yourself up, right? You're not in that situation by your own choice. You are in that situation because something has changed, right? That is the first acknowledgement that you want. Second is remain calm, composed, and take a step back. Okay. What I mean by taking a step back is not react immediately to the scenario. Identify the points which will require that change, right? So in this scenario, what helps me is structuring the problem statement well, right? So leadership change, right? What does leadership change mean? Leadership change means trying something new. Leadership change means कि जो पहले किया था सब छोड़ो, अभी नया कुछ करो, right? If you go back one step, calm yourself down, take your team along with you, and go and tell back the leader who has changed that, boss, these are the 10 things that we already tried in the past. What you're asking us to do is one of these 10 things. I have the data points to tell you what we have done in the past and whether it's worked or not. This is just one example. But I'm trying to tell you is that once you go back one step, you are able to think more clearly, right? And again, if you panic, right? I've seen leaders, it may sound very funny, but I've seen leaders, the moment such a situation happens, you tend to call your team and say, boss, we are in a very bad scenario now. We are like, ab kya karenge, pata nahi. You need to be the calmest one, right? I mean, that's super critical. One of the bosses I respect the most in my past career is the one who I called on a Saturday to say कि मेरा custom lot reject हो गया है Dell का, and my customer is going to, let's say, kill me. He said, I am actually just exercising. I'll finish my treadmill and I'll call you in 30 minutes, right? And I realized कि हाँ 30 minutes से कुछ नहीं बदलने वाला है, right? But after 30 minutes, if I'm able to have a good, calm discussion with him, I should be able to find out a solution. Also, I think the last thing which we need to understand is कि because the situation is happened because of some unknown parameter, don't be afraid that the end result will harm your career or your job, right? Because ये बहुत मैंने common चीज देखी है, right? बोलते हैं ना, you suffer more in your brain than in reality, right? Come out of that zone. It's easy to think bad things about the future, but some of them never happen. It just wasted bandwidth of your head. Thing you could change from how you approached. Yeah, I think the biggest change in my approach has been doing something syndrome, right? That's what I spoke about, and that's why I shared it with you guys. पहले क्या होता था कि जब भी uncertainty होती थी, जब भी volatility होती थी, I used to always react, right? And I realized कि जैसे ही वो the similar stock exchange example, right? There are times when the market is very volatile. You will be FOMO होगा कि मतलब कुछ खरीदना है, कुछ बेचना है. Staying away is the best strategy, right? Use that time to research कि मुझे कौन सा स्टॉक खरीदना है जब market will become non-volatile, right? That's a very wrong example. मतलब a lot of people may not connect to it, but I would say doing something syndrome is something that I would go back and change. I would not react to every scenario.
Nice brief on importance of spending time on planning and being ready to face the unexpected. Would you suggest being wrong is less costly than being slow?
In a Vuca world, I would say being wrong is less costly than being slow. But again, I wouldn't want to generalize the answer so much because it would depend context to context, right? For example, if you are talking about a deployment in a banking B2B scenario where a bank is going to either fail or not fail because of your deployment, then I would say being slow is right? But in most of the cases that I have spent in my career, when it comes to so again, वो impact के ऊपर depend करता है ना. अगर आपका impact is going to be something that is not going to change the world in the short run, I would say doing things fast, failing fast, and creating faster feedback loops are less costly. Actually, you put it very well. It's less costly. It's not right or wrong, right? So yes, my answer is it would be less costly in most of the times.
Super awesome. So Karthik has asked, when working in a team, we often face this conundrum of multiple opinions, suggestions, and approaches. How do we predict what will work and what will not?
I mean, I would have loved to say octopus Paul, but I mean, I don't think you can ever predict what will work and not. So that's why I said ki think about it from various paths from reaching A to B, right? The simplest approach that I actually go when I have multiple opinions. See, opinions is a different scenario, right? Opinion is when a team disagrees, right? Or a team has different opinions, right? Or layer level opinions, right? For example, the CEO believes something, the person reporting to the CEO believes something, or the board believes something, right? That's a different scenario altogether. But if you're talking about how to predict what will work and what will not, prediction is not the right word, right? I mean, I would say model. I would want to model the typical outcome and decide what is the most probability of success, right? I don't know whether I'll be able to give you a proper answer, Karthik, but मेरे को लगता नहीं आप कभी भी predict कर पाओगे. That is the whole crux of a VUCA scenario, right? It's very hard to predict, right? The best I can do is I can chart down the various options, opinions and options, and I can see कि हर opinion में मुझे क्या करना पड़ेगा. So when shit hits the roof, I'm ready for it. But that's the whole point of being ready for something new, right? I would go with ranking the most one where my heart is the decision. If I were to make the decision, I would go with the one which is where my heart is and play that plan out. It's okay. I mean, but I know कि बाकी 2-3 चीजें क्या कर सकता हूँ मैं. So if I fail, like I said, fail fast and learn fast. That's what I would do.
What is the tipping point when one decides to cut your losses and reboot in a VUCA world?
Super question. I would say this has been my learning, and at 2017-18, this is what I realized, right? I didn't know when to cut my losses, and I invested in ideas beyond a point, right? I would say you have identified your anchor, right? I said there is a decision-making anchor, right? When there were multiple variables, you identified the anchor, right? If my decision was based on the anchor of consumer, let's say consumer love. For in my current business, my most important anchor is consumer love. Consumer love is the rating of the restaurant It doesn't matter how many orders I do per day. What matters is how well my restaurant is rated. If my restaurant rating starts dropping, I know it's my time to cut my loss and move ahead, right? That's why I would say identifying your anchor is very important. If your anchor goes in the wrong direction, you need to kind of cut your losses and reboot, right? But if any other parameters are moving, you still have an opportunity till your anchor is stable. That's what I would say. Decide when to cut your losses.
Volatility versus uncertainty. I think volatility is subset of uncertainty. We can map out A to B for each volatile subjects. Can you explain the difference?
Yeah, I think that's why I took the A to B scenario, right? I mean, that is where I also had a long time I couldn't differentiate between volatility and uncertainty, right? Volatility is the speed and the amplitude of change. Okay. Uncertainty is sometimes very, very slow, right? Uncertainty is about कि मतलब क्या होने वाला है, uncertain है, right? Volatility is कि मुझे पता है कि change होने वाला है. The question mark is how big the change would be and how fast the change would be. That is what I would say is volatility versus uncertainty. Volatility is a subset of uncertainty. I would say volatility is a very rapid version of uncertainty, right? But in some way, right, you will always know volatility is coming in certain situations, right? Like I give an example of stock exchange, right? Is stock exchange uncertain? It is uncertain, but it is definitely volatile, right? So yeah, in some way you can say it's a subset, but I would say volatility is more speed and the rapid pace of change. Uncertainty is about the, क्या होगा पता ही नहीं मुझे.
Thank you very much, Dhimant, on behalf of the entire Zeta management for investing the time along with our leaders on the call. This means a lot to us. And folks on the call, we are very happy. We are rebooting onto the reboot. So this is 2.0.